Hi everyone. Welcome to the iSpring Academy webinar series, where every week we talk about e-learning trends, share iSpring Academy tips and tricks, and cover clients' cases. My name is Alice, and I will be the moderator for today's session. Today, over the next hour, we are going to analyze the most frequent mistakes in course design that ruin engagement and metrics. And to do that, we've invited our e-learning expert from our iSpring Academy, April. So she will help to hone your course design skills. Hi, April. How are you today?
Hi Alice, I'm doing great. Thank you for asking. And how are you doing?
Feeling great. Thank you. Besides asking your questions in the chat room, you can also chat with our in our new group on LinkedIn. So there you will find a lot of helpful and inspiring content. So useful resources on course development and content writing, webinars and events announcements, the latest trends in e-learning and instructional design, some career advice and useful tips for novice instructional designers. Join our group and find yourself in the company of like-minded, passionate instructional designers and course creators. And at this point, I'm ready to go to give the mic over to you, April.
Okay, thank you, Alice. So, we're ready to start? Hello again and welcome. Our today's topic is the 15 most frequent mistakes in course design and how to avoid them. I'm sure this will be a huge help for all of you, and we'll dive into the details in just a moment. And first, a little about my department, iSpring Academy. So we are a part of iSpring Solutions, of course, and our job is to provide resources to inform, inspire, and upskill our customers and e-learning enthusiasts all over the world. We provide video courses for instructional designers, hold webinars like these on content design and e-learning management, and we offer an iSpring certificate program. And I'm sure some of you already taken this certification. And we also create off-the-shelf and custom courses for our clients. And so that's what we do. And I introduced myself, and now I'd like to learn more about you. First of all, let's check how many newbies and pros we have today. I can see that Alice already launched the poll. And so you have three options on your screens. Select the one that suits you best and let us know how many years you are in e-learning. So I can see that it's almost the same amount of people who are in e-learning less than a year, from 1 to 3 years, and more than 3 years. And now the results are the following. So we have more pros today, and that's perfect because, guys, I really want you to share your thoughts on today's webinar content to see what opinions and what other things you can share with us. And also everyone who just started their e-learning path, also get involved because it's a great opportunity to share each other experience and to learn from each other. So thank you for answering this question. And my second question is, why did you join us today? As there are many possible answers, we didn't want to limit you with poll answer options. Just write the reason why you registered for this webinar and why you came today in the chat. It will help us to understand what else we can include in our next webinars and just see why you are here with us today. For example, I joined today's webinar to discuss with you the most common mistakes in course design and show you some of the examples of them so as to um, let you see how to avoid them and how to find them. Because sometimes we understand that something is not that good, but before we see it on examples, we cannot see it in real life. So that would be really useful for everyone who wants to improve their course design skills. Okay, I can see that some questions already in the chat. And if you don't mind, I will read out loud some of them. So Davis says that the title was curious. Okay, keen to know if I'm inadvertently committing any mistakes. Yeah, that's a great reason, Debbie. Thank you for sharing. So Clarence says to explore different ways to keep students engaged and interested in the lessons. That's also a great reason because some of the mistakes can spoil even a great course. And just let the students know that they don't need to waste their time on this course. So yeah, you're in the right place today. Yeah. So Leo says, just a refresher, really see what others are thinking. As I said, that's a great way to share each other experience and learn from each other. So also a great reason. Okay, thank you guys for all the reasons you wrote in the chat. It's really good to see such an active audience, and I hope that you will continue to be this active throughout the whole webinar. So that was my part for introducing to each other. And like I said, today we are going to go over the 15 most frequent mistakes. And our list is in order of increasing frequency of these mistakes. We will start with the 15th most common mistake and count down to the number one most common mistake. So stay tuned to learn the our top three mistakes at the end. And we will start with our 15th mistake. So this we call distracting effects in slide background photos. This doesn't happen too often, but we sometimes still come across it. Sure, we all like to add photos to make our presentations more appealing and all that, but if you add certain effects, this is going to be visually distracting for your learners. For example, on your screens now you can see a course cover with a pixelated effect. Maybe the course designer wanted to make the photo appear less noticeable than the text, but honestly, it does just the opposite. It really stands out because this effect catches your eyes immediately and not in a good way. Here is another example of how PowerPoint effects can be applied to a course cover. This one is more subtle, but with the photo blown out, it's harder to see the text, and a lot of elements here just get lost. So I'm not saying never use any effects, but for the most part, you're going to avoid them because they can be really distracting for our learners. Our next mistake is wild speech bubbles, or rather their tails. Sometimes we see course developers extend the tails of the speech bubbles right to the character, thinking the learner will not guess who this or that phrase belongs to. But all you need to do is point the element in the right direction. You don't have to extend it to the character's ear, as we can see here. I often see this element extended right to the mouth of the character, and to be honest, it looks really weird, as I think we can all agree. So be sure to pay attention to those speech bubble tails. And here too, the tail is just out of control. To avoid the temptation of creating such a long tail, just place the speech bubble closer to the character. If we follow the proximity principle, which says that elements related to each other should be placed side by side, we won't even be tempted to create these kind of speech bubble tails. And if you need two or more speech bubbles on the slide, for example, when you have a dialogue between two characters, imagine how this slide would look like if we used those wild speech bubble tails like It would look really chaotic and intimidating. And now on your screen, you can see an example of a normal looking speech bubble. The tail is small and simply points at the speaker. So this example is a good one. Okay, on to mistake number 13, overuse of art objects in PowerPoint. PowerPoint is full of various 3D figures and text volume effects, and it might be tempting to use them in an effort to embellish or, I don't know, highlight text on a slide. But really, these are rather distracting and a bit on the cheesy side. In the end, it's better to keep it simple rather than create a sort of visual chaos on the slide with these kinds of objects. Now let's take a look at mistake number 12, violation of the proximity rule. We already talked about this today, and now let's dive in more details. The proximity principle is the idea that it's important to place elements with connected meaning close to each other. This is because the physical location of each item in the design creates a logical relationship with other features on the page. So the proximity plays an important role when it comes to to learner comprehension. If you violate the proximity principle, you risk confusing your learners. They might get overwhelmed and simply close the course after the few first slides and never return to it. Let's take a look at the example on the screen. Here, the proximity principle is clearly being ignored. The numbers are on the left and the text elements referring to them are on the right. And these elements are not only far from each other, but also placed on different levels. In the middle, we can see a character who literally divides our content blocks. As a result, it's hard to grasp which elements relate to each other. To make the slide better, I would move the character to the right side on the screen, where there is a gray rectangle, while placing the text to the left closer to the number icons. This will make the information much easier to understand visually. Okay, that's it for proximity principle. And now our mistake number 12, this mistake number 11, and it's called the great and terrible gradient. You can batch a number of things by using a gradient incorrectly. For instance, when we add a gradient like we did on the example slide, it can cause your color scheme to clash. Also, the text becomes hard to read. Item 2 and partly item 3 here are virtually unreadable against this background, since there is not enough contrast where one color blends into the other. But a gradient is not always a bad idea, and sometimes it works well on certain slides. For instance, it can be used good on player buttons, as you can see on the example. So you can use a gradient, of course, but you need to incorporate it into your course in a way that works. And if you don't feel comfortable making custom gradients yet yourself, I would search online for ready-made gradients to use, and there are a lot of websites that can help you. So to sum it up, depending on how you use it, gradient can hurt or help your presentation. We're down to mistake number 10, too many different shapes. Look at this slide. At first glance, well, the slide might seem well designed and there is nothing wrong with it. But this slide uses too many different shapes. For example, we can see a round shape for buttons, a rounded and a sharp-edged rectangle for the text, and an unusual shape for the photo. So in total, there are 4 shapes on one slide, which is way too many. It's important to understand that shapes convey a certain meaning. That's why it's best to use similar shapes in one course. Let's discuss shapes in terms of psychology now. When you are at the planning stage of your course, you certainly want to consider what the general mood and tone of the course will be. And one way is to convey this mood is through shapes. For instance, is circle a symbol of positivity and usually associated with subject matter that isn't that heavy? And in courses with serious content, I don't know, for example, something with laws or maybe fire safety, the use of more dramatic or edgy shapes could work better. But again, it all depends on the course, on the mood it has, and the content. So it's up to you what shapes you use, but be sure to use the same shapes. So not as we can see it on this example, when we have four different shapes on one slide, just be consistent and use similar shapes. And of course, if we are talking about the overabundance of different shapes on this slide, when a course contains too many different shapes, it really gives off a vibe of chaos. Right now, we're looking at only one slide. Now let's imagine a 30-slide course in which each slide uses different shapes. Such slides will look odd and the multitude of shapes will be distracting, so this is not what we want. Make sure you determine what shapes will be used for the slide before you begin building your course. It will save you a lot of time and nerves. The next mistake is called everything is important. This happens when you want to highlight several key areas on the slide because you feel like everything on the slide is important. Just everything. And if you feel this way, take a deep breath and maybe rethink your content on this slide. Because there is a rule that says that one slide should contain only one key idea. And if you find that you have 5 or 10 key ideas on one slide, like here, you need to break it up into different slides. You could also use one of the built-in interactions in iSpring Suite to convey information better. And for instance, here we can divide the text into different slides and choose the key idea and the secondary idea and then place them hierarchically. So if you try to follow one slide, one idea, rule, you probably won't encounter such a complication. Mistake number 8 is misused animations. Courses often use animation, which can be a great way to engage learners, but only if it adds meaning to the course and doesn't seem to be used randomly. Let's take a look at the example slide. Just take your time and analyze what emotions you have when you see this slide. So, what do you think of this slide use of animation? You can share your thoughts in the chat. It would be great if we can see how different people react to such animations. Let's take a look at it one more time. And this slide is actually not so bad, but it does violate the rule that says there shouldn't be more than 2 or 3 animation effects in the entire course. So be sure that you don't use a fade out animation on one slide, a pop-up type on another, and rotation on the next. Many different animations can create a sense of disorganization for the learner. They may be interested at first, of course, but it will get extremely annoying by the 5th slide. And of course, the last part of this animation, when this fireman was like spinning, it was really funny because we could only see he's up to the waist height and it was like he was cut in half. So be careful with animations. And sometimes courses can also use some transitions that can really take away from the slide. Let's take a look at the one we have here. It's my favorite one. So this transition might be fun in a course for elementary school students, or I don't know if you are creating a course on origami. But for an adult audience, it might come off as a bit unprofessional. So this is an example of how important it is to know your audience so you present your material in a way that is appropriate for them. Okay, so one last time. I told you that's my favorite one. Okay, so mistake number 7. Characters suspended in zero gravity. We love characters. They add so much personality and personalization to your course. But please, avoid making your characters look like the laws of gravity do not apply to them. Unfortunately, I often see people positioning their characters like this. I'd like to note that it's not necessary to show the character's full height because we could lose eye contact. If the character is far away from um, the learner will have more trouble recognizing their emotions. And almost all the time, it's very important for them to recognize characters' emotions because we use characters to say something, to bring some connection for the learner to the course because they are left one-on-one with the course, and the character can be a substitute of a teacher or maybe mentor. That's why it's really important to show their emotions. And to do that, we can place the character closer, cutting it off at around waist height, but please don't use rotation animation on them so that it wouldn't be that strange. But yes, you can cut them at around waist height and just resize them. And this will make the character larger on the slide, and we will be able to see their emotions to create better visual and emotional contact. I'm sorry. And here is another example of some floating fox. In this case, the creator tried to pull all the characters on the floor as if they were standing, but it still doesn't quite look normal, so it's better not to risk that. And here we have another version of previous slide. We place the characters closer to each other and closer to the learner. You can place characters in other ways, of course. Just be careful and don't leave them floating in the air. So this example is a good one. Okay. Our next mistake is known as text overload. We often make the mistake of adding too much text. If you realize that you have a large amount of text and it doesn't fit, think about dividing the content into a few slides, as we said before. Um, let's look at the next example with too much text. Our learner will have to move their head from one end to the other on every line, or side or head, it doesn't matter. And if they have a large monitor, they'll really have a serious neck workout. And this is just asking too much of our learners. Reading text shouldn't require physical exertion. Another theme that's often used in courses is a justified text layout. I've also included this mistake here under number 6, but actually it could be placed higher since this is unfortunately very common. A justified layout is taboo in courses because it creates additional space between words where there shouldn't be any, and each additional space is interpreted by our brain as a stop. But we don't want our learners to stop after every word. The problem is solved by just aligning the text to the left. So typos and spelling errors. And I don't think I need to explain why this is so bad. And you might be surprised, but I do still see people make this mistake. And this is a huge no-no, and I strongly recommend having courses checked by professional proofreaders, or if that's not possible, at least but one of your colleagues, or at least use spell check and grammar check. It's also really important to take a break from your course and come back to it later. Don't ship it out to your learners right away after you finish it. Everyone makes errors and typos, and this is especially true if you're working on a course alone without a team and you're responsible for all the stages. At a certain point, you will have gone through the text so many times that you will stop seeing your own errors. So be sure to take a break to reset your brain a bit for an hour or more. I don't know, have a cup of coffee, do some yoga, take a walk or whatever, and then you can come back to proofread it. All right, we have come to mistake number 4, another favorite of mine, patchwork slide. This is a slide that uses a mishmash of different styles, colors, ways of presenting information. This is not the worst example, but you can see that the colors don't match well. Icons have different styles and the text is in different formats. And we can also see a generic stock character here. I assume it was added to draw our eyes to the text, but unfortunately here it also does just the opposite. I can't stop looking at this little guy. Can you? Okay, so the word algorithm is underlined on the slide, and many people, including me, associate underlined text with a link to a website. It looks like something you should click on to go somewhere. So only use underlined words that are links and use bold for important elements or increase their size to draw attention. And of course, it's important to select a single way to draw attention to the text throughout the entire course. If, for instance, you already are using italics, don't use bold or underlining. So we're down to our final 3 most frequent made mistakes. Number 3 is excessive buttons and tabs. On this slide, you can see the course from the learner's perspective, and here is the player that user interacts with. And you can see the standard player template with default buttons and tabs is used here. But if there is no presenter or resources in the course, these buttons in the tab section should be deleted from the player, should be removed. If the course has no voiceover or background music, you need to remove the sound on-off button and the slide replay button that we can see on the bottom of the player. So to sum it up, be sure you only use buttons that are actually necessary for your course. And of course, don't use additional buttons, add buttons, but also be sure to add all the buttons your user would need. For example, if you have a video on a slide or voiceover, be sure to include the volume button and be sure to let your learners to replay the content on the slide because sometimes when we're trying to add as little buttons as possible, we could sometimes forget to include the ones that the learner would need. Okay, we have arrived at number 2, poor use of hierarchy. The idea of a hierarchy in design involves positioning the elements on a slide so that the learner follows a specific order. First, they read the title, then the key idea and main information, and maybe some additional information afterwards. Here is the title, and here the title is really competing with the subtitle. To be honest, it's even hard to tell which of the elements is the title. The entire content on the slide has to be understood in order to grasp what is the most important in the text. So to use hierarchy effectively, you need to show the importance of the elements on the slide by using a kind of visual ranking system. The most important elements should be larger and more visible, and font size and boldness should be applied in the order of decreasing importance. And so we present the content in a way that makes the learner intuitively understand the order of importance of elements on the slide. And it will help them a lot because right now when I'm trying to understand what this slide is about, I need to read the whole text. And when we have the hierarchy in a good use, this wouldn't be a problem for our learners. And now the big reveal, the number 1 most frequent mistake made in course design is the use of substandard images. And I mean the most common mistake. And sometimes we all go through this stage at one point. So, when selecting an image for a course, we need to understand the meaning it conveys, if it complements our material or is a metaphor of some kind. Try not to add images just because they look great or just because you think you need to place an image here because you only have text. Everything on the slide should be there for a reason and for a meaningful reason. If we look at the image on the screen in terms of whether it fits the meaning of the slide, we can see that it doesn't work. The image depicts a team, or at least I think it does, which is suggestive of coordinated teamwork or a common idea, while the text is telling us about office rules. So there is a certain clash of meanings. And of course, avoid the temptation to use stock images. You will come across many of them online. Most of these photos are unnatural and make your course look immature. For example, in this image, we can see an ideal picture, an ideal computer without a speck of dust, and a photoshopped person with perfect skin. This doesn't look real, and learners don't identify with things that don't match up with reality. It's important to add images that are authentic and create an emotional connection with learners. Here is another example of a stock image. It's a little better than the previous one because it depicts a more realistic workplace situation. We can see an office with workers, but look at their facial expressions. Is this how people work at a computer? The perfect posture, the excessively bleached and pressed work shirts scream no. And here's another stock image. It's a bit better than the two previous ones, but still doesn't ring true to real life. How often do you see colleagues high-fiving each other after a meeting? Well, for me, that's not true. I mean, sometimes we can be really thrilled about a meeting, but not that thrilled. And the cringe factor on this one is pretty obvious. Don't put your learners through this. And just for good measure, here are some more examples of random, completely mystifying photos that you should avoid using. Just avoid, just forget about them. And this one with the computer on the beach is my favorite. She's having so much fun. I mean, in any case, you got the point. And uh, let's do, let's take a look at the examples of photos and decide whether they're stock photos or if they are photos, they are good photos to use in a course. Example number one is on your screen now. So Alice, could you please launch a poll? So take a look at this picture, notice all the details and vote if this is a good example of a photo to use in your course or not. um, take your time. You can also share, and I mean, I would encourage you to share your thoughts about whether it's good or not in the comments, just to give some reasons why you decided if it's a good or a bad photo. Look at the details, and when you're deciding if it's a good photo to use or not, just imagine your reality. Is this how it is in your real life? Do you use the same pencils with your colleagues? Do you usually gather around the same computer and point with these pencils? Do you have this background in your office? So to be honest, for some people, it can be a good photo because maybe it is a reality for them. And for some, it can be a stock photo because, I mean, for me, it seems unrealistic. Here we see colleagues with identical pencils in their hands who are actively looking at the monitor and pointing at it with a pencil. And the computer, the laptop doesn't have any wires, so the table is almost ideal with no additional things. And I mean, in my reality, it's not true. So I'd say that this is a stock photo. And well, let's just take a look at other examples and you will understand what I mean. So Um, Next photo. Most likely this is a photo from maybe the same series as the previous one. If we look at how the elements are arranged on the table, it's pretty clear that this isn't a normal looking workplace. And the same pencil. And there is this is an unrealistic setting, so it's clearly a stock photo. Let's move on to another example. Here we see laptops with chargers, an open notebook on the table, there are stickers on the wall, chairs in random places. This is a much more authentic scene. It looks like a real office, so this would be a good photo to use in your courses. This photo is also pretty good because everyone is sitting in different natural positions and not like this. And there is a feeling of a little controlled chaos, which feels true to life. So you can definitely use this photo in a course. I hope you got the idea. And again, the main reason to use a photo or not is to realize, is this how it is in real life or not? So that's basically the idea of our mistake number one. So what do you think of our today's list of frequent mistakes in course design? You can see all the mistakes we covered today on your screens. And again, I would encourage you to share your thoughts, comments, emotions, and of course, ask questions in the chat. And while you're sharing your emotions and questions, I'd like to remind of our great video course that I already mentioned. So if you want to get helpful tips on how to avoid the mistakes we covered and more, and to speed up course development and use iSpring Suite like a pro, our video course is perfect for you. Your trainer will be Anna Poli, a senior designer at iSpring Academy, and I'm sure some of them already met Anna because she's a speaker at a lot of conferences. She always shares her expertise and experience, and she can tell you a lot. So she will share some tips and tricks again in this course, but more detailed a lot proficient advice, and it will help you create courses on a professional level. So this course has 20 video lessons with an average duration of 15 minutes. 10 lessons come with a practical assignment that will take your course development skills to a new level. And this is really like comfortable pacing because you don't depend on your trainer. All lessons are available right away. You can take them wherever, whenever, however you like, and you can study at your own pace. Your trainer will check every task, answer your questions, show you mistakes, and help you fix them. The feedback is really important because if I watch a video, that's cool. I can learn a lot. But if I try to practice it in reality and then I get feedback from my trainer, that would be completely different level of learning. So, as I said before, you'll be assigned tasks after each lesson, almost each lesson, to put knowledge into practice and build your course step by step. So during this video lesson, you will be building the course, and at the end, you will have a new work that you can include in your portfolio. And if you just started your way in instructional design, that's a great way to gain some expertise and to get real work into your portfolio. Let's wrap up our session. Thank you for spending all this time with us today. It's been an hour, and just happy to be here presenting for you. And as I said, a lot of times today, it's really good to see active audience who is completely in with you in this like content. So thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you so much, April, for your presentation. Thank you guys for being so active and for coming today and for spending this hopefully valuable hour with us. I hope you enjoyed this session and see you next time.
See you guys. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.